Magic Johnson. I wouldn't say he's an unbelievable tweeter. I wouldn't say he's broken a lot of news and really made me rethink basketball a bunch of times. In real life, unbelievable asset, most fun person to talk to. Twitter, maybe not as great. But he tweeted something that really got my juices going. He said, Anthony Edwards is the best in-game dunker right now. And I was like, whoa. And I'm thinking about it. I'm like, is that true? That is true. I think that's true. And it got me down this rabbit hole trying to figure out who my best in-game dunkers of all time were, which I think I did in a column like 20 years ago. I have some honorable mention guys, and then I'm going to list my top 5. Honorable mention, David Thompson, who is kind of the first great in-game dunker. And unfortunately for me was, we didn't have League Pass back then. I think I saw him in person twice and I saw him on TV a couple times. That's it. But there's some good highlights. Like he was only 6'3", 6'4", but could go up and over people. Daryl Dawkins, Clyde Drexler, Scottie Pippen, Jason Richardson, LeBron, Wade, Kobe. I'd put Wemby in there. I would not. Edwards is now in the conversation, but I would not put him on the all-time list. But I'm psyched that he's even the first guy I would think about in this conversation in a while. And I don't think Jordan makes my 5. I'm afraid I'm going to get hit by a lightning bolt, but Jordan doesn't make it. Jordan had some really good in-game dunks. See, I mean, he had the baseline one over Ewing. I get it. Jordan had awesome dunks. But what made Jordan great was how he operated in the air and levitated and bought that extra time. And it was more how he was around the rim than just the vicious in-game dunks. When I think of like in-game dunkers, and this is why I feel bad leaving David Thompson out, these are dunks that you don't know they're happening in the moment. And the guy who's dunking doesn't even realize it's happening in the moment. And then all of a sudden he's dunking on somebody. And there's one guy in particular that went out of his way to dunk on people. And I wrote about this in my basketball book, and he's my number 1 of all time, but we're not going to get to him yet. My 5 guys going backwards. Shawn Kemp, number 5. Shawn Kemp, especially like that first 5 years of Seattle stage, he was just on SportsCenter every once in a while. They'd be like, let's go to Seattle. And as soon as I said, let's go to Seattle, I was like, did Shawn Kemp dunk on somebody? Like you were thinking that way. He had the famous one over Alton Lister, but just in general was, he was like 6'10", was the first like 6'10" guy who just seemed like he was going out of his way to dunk on people. He would have the alley-oops. He has to be on there. Dr. J, I can't believe he's 4th on my list. Dr. J had some classics. Unfortunately, a lot of them aren't on video from the ABA, which I think he was dunking on everybody left and right. I can only judge from what we saw when he got to the NBA, but in the 77 season, he has 2 dunks over Bill Walton, 1 in the All-Star game and then 1 in the finals. That are 2 of like the best dunks ever. He's got the rockabye dunk over Cooper. So he has to be in the top 4. Vince Carter, some people would have Vince Carter first. He has the Fred Weiss dunk. But Vince had that run really first 4 years of his career when he was going out of his way to dunk on people. And it was really, really fun to watch. I'm both like still in awe of the first couple of Vince years, but also like a little disappointed. I feel like it actually could have been, it could have even been greater. He should be number 1 unless he's not. Number 2 is Blake Griffin, who now has been forgotten as this just really like the first great Twitter dunker. This was right when stuff started going on Twitter as it was happening in real life. But his first like couple Lob City years, and I was fortunate enough to go to a couple of the games where he had like some of his famous ones, but it was out of control. He jumped so high. Went out of his way to dunk on anyone. Plus they had Jordan too. And I actually think, I don't want to do where they do the thing on social media where they're like, white chocolate was a problem. But Blake Griffin was a real problem. People were terrified to be posterized by him, and they would get the fuck out of the way when he was starting to dunk. Number 1 is Dominique Wilkins. This is one of those things like I won't entertain arguments about it. he dunked on everybody. I remember doing a podcast with him for Grantland. It was like one of the first things I wanted to talk to him about is, were you actually like, Dominique loved dunking on people so much that it was almost like when he was in the air, he would have reached over and grabbed somebody to put underneath him so he could dunk on them. He did the greatest dunk I've ever seen in person when in Game 7 of the 88 Celtics Hawks, he took a shot from the top of the key and immediately followed it and just brought it home. I don't know if that was on anybody, but it was one of those dunks like the crowd almost went silent. It was like we had just watched a murder. We're like, what just could a human being do that? But I think what really made him special, and especially when they were in the Atlanta games, and Atlanta used to love playing the Celtics back then, but he would just go out of his way to dunk on everybody. And there were more dunking kind of dummies back then. There was a lot more, the league was not as athletic in the mid 80s. He had a dunk on Bird once that he dunked on Bird, and I thought he killed Bird. Bird, for some reason, tried to block one of his dunks, and Dominique sent him like into the basket support. Was like, did Bird just actually get hurt on that? He is, to me, number one. I'm going to be hard pressed to ever in my life think anybody's going to be better at dunking, because he would dunk over his head. He would dunk two hands on people. He had the two hand on top of people, which I just feel like nobody does anymore. So seeing Edwards last night dunk on John Collins the way he did, which is just amazing. Maybe he'll climb the ladder. He's only 22. It feels like he's still growing as a crazy athlete. Anyway, that was my list. I can't believe I didn't put Jordan on it. So Kemp 5, Doc 4, Vince 3, Griffin 2, Dominique 1.